Γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making a mushroom and cheese galette using puff pastry. I love using puff pastry for galettes. It's so much easier than making a pie crust or anything like that, and it does not compromise flavor. It's so good. The mushrooms are hearty and delicious. We're going to be using feta and mozzarella. It's an elegant and beautiful recipe to make for a fancy gathering or to serve it for brunch with a nice salad. Let's get started. So we're going to begin with the mushrooms. I have 1.5 pounds of mushrooms. I like to clean them off using a damp towel, just rubbing them really well to get off any excess dirt. And then I also take off the stems, and you could either save them for stocks or broths or to put in other recipes, but we're not using them in this one. Then we're going to go ahead and thinly slice the mushrooms and set them aside. Next, I'm going to slice up this onion. I'm just going to remove the peel, cut it in half, and just cut it into slices. You want a really big onion. If you don't have a big onion, you could use 2 small onions, yellow or red. Both work for this recipe. Put the onion in a skillet with some olive oil, about 1/4 cup of olive oil, and a pinch of salt, and let it cook until it begins to get softened. You don't want it to get too soft because it is going to continue to cook with the mushrooms. Next, I have 4 garlic cloves that I've grated. I'm just going to add them in with the onions until they're nice and fragrant and warm through. Since it's already grated, it's just going to take a few seconds. You don't want to overcook the garlic, otherwise it'll burn. I'm also going to throw in 3 to 4 sprigs of thyme. If you want to, you can remove the leaves off of the thyme, but I'm just going to let them cook in there and then pick out the stems later on. If you don't have fresh thyme, you can definitely use a heaping teaspoon of dried thyme in this recipe instead of the fresh. Next, I'm going to add the sliced mushrooms, and I'm going to increase the heat to a medium high, being very careful not to let anything burn. And I'm going to let this cook for about 6 minutes. I'm not going to stir it too much, but I am going to go in every few minutes to make sure that nothing on the bottom is burning. But you do want a little bit of color on the mushrooms, and you also want to season them with some salt and black pepper. Take everything off of the heat and set it aside so we could arrange the galette. So I like to buy these big sheets of puff pastry from my restaurant supply store. They are so easy to use, but if all you have are the smaller ones, you can definitely stick them together and just roll it out to one big sheet. You want to make sure that the center, there's a diameter in there somewhere that's about 12 inches round. You don't have to roll the puff pastry out to a round, because once you fold the edges over to create the crust, it's going to be a round shape anyway, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a little bit. So go ahead and roll the puff pastry out a little bit and transfer it to a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. And then we're going to take about 100 to 150 grams of shredded mozzarella cheese. If you have a Gruyere cheese, it goes well in this too. Gouda is even really nice, but I'm using mozzarella because it gives it that pizza texture, and it's kind of mild too, so that way the mushrooms can shine. So I'm just going to create a layer in the center of the puff pastry just like this. Then I'm going to transfer all of that delicious mushroom mixture over the cheese, and I'm going to fold the crust over the mushrooms to create a beautiful rustic crust. You could pinch the sides so that way it could stay together. And if you're using the fresh thyme like I did that's on the stems, you can go ahead and fish out those stems and just discard them at this time. And before you add the mushrooms to the puff pastry, it is a good idea to taste them, and if they need a little bit more salt and pepper, you could add it at this time. You could even add some more black pepper on top right now. And then I'm going to crumble about 100 to 150 grams of feta cheese. I love to use a sheep's milk feta for this because it's nice and creamy and it has such good flavor. Just crumble it over the top. I have an egg yolk here that I'm just going to whisk together with 1 or 2 tablespoons of milk, just to kind of brush the edges of the crust with, so that way they bake and they're nice and golden. At this point, you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can pop the tart in your fridge or in your freezer so it can chill while the oven preheats. That way the puff pastry is nice and puffed and golden when it bakes. Bake this on the center rack for between 30 to 35 minutes or until it's nice and golden. Take it out, and then I like to add a little bit of a balsamic dressing to this. I just add a couple of tablespoons of balsamic vinegar with about 1 tablespoon of Greek honey. You can use your favorite honey to this, and a splash of olive oil. Whisk that all together, and then you could either serve it alongside the galette, or you can drizzle it on top. That mushroom goes so well with the balsamic vinaigrette. It just puts it all together and adds another layer of flavor. Once this comes out of the oven, the house is gonna smell incredible, but you do wanna let it sit for a few minutes before you serve it. And then you can cut it into about 8 serving size pieces and serve this with a nice side salad. If you're serving this for brunch, it goes really well with eggs too. There's so many ways to serve it. It's beautiful as an appetizer too. Let's do the taste test. It is perfect. The mushrooms and the onions are slightly sweet and hearty. That balsamic vinegar just gives it a little bit of a kick. The feta is so creamy. I forgot to mention that I also did sprinkle some fresh parsley, finely chopped parsley over the top for a little hint of color and freshness. It looks like a pizza and almost tastes like a pizza, but more elegant. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. You can print the recipe out on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.